Welcome to the Tom Woods Show, episode 385. I'm back after being out of town for a week and a half, doing some speaking, spending some time with the family out of town. Lots of fun. I'm refreshed and ready to go once again. Of course, the show ran in my absence because I recorded about 800,000 episodes in advance so I could take the time off, but here I am with some fresh ones for you. And today we're talking once again to George Reisman. We're talking about a brand new essay of his. Well, it's an adaptation of some work that he's done already, but it is now available as a standalone essay called Freedom of Opportunity, Not Equality of Opportunity. I think there are libertarians who use this term equality of opportunity when what they mean to say is freedom of opportunity. We have to be very careful in our use of language because that word equality can be exploited in all kinds of nasty ways. And George Reisman and I are going to talk about this important topic today. Professor Reisman is Professor Emeritus of Economics at Pepperdine University. He is the author of numerous books, most importantly, his major treatise, Capitalism. You can follow him at capitalism.net. I will put all kinds of George Reisman-related links on today's show notes page, including the essay, link to the essay that we're talking about. That show notes page will be tomwoods.com/385. Here we go, talking to George Reisman. George Reisman, welcome back to the show.
Well, it's good to be back, Tom.
I'm a fan of this essay because I think it is a careless phrase that even some otherwise decent people use. There's some bad people who use it, but some otherwise decent people use the term equality of opportunity, and they use it to contrast it with what they call equality of results. They say, I don't believe in equality of results, I favor equality of opportunity. But the point of this essay is to show that even the concept of equality of opportunity is actually a dangerous one for the cause of freedom. Now, what's wrong with it? It sounds benign.
If you think about what would be required to achieve equality of opportunity, usually they think in terms simply of inheritance of money. But the opportunities open to you depend very heavily on your upbringing. What kind of parents did you have? Were they intelligent? Did they have a good vocabulary? Did they treat you well? And so that plays a major role. And if you wanted to, and that can also influence your ability to earn money as well. If you'd want to achieve full equality of opportunity, people would have to have an equal upbringing. They'd have to have parents of the same kind, with the same values and knowledge and so forth. And that would only be achievable if you had destroyed the family and children were raised in state-run orphanages, as Plato desired. Now, even that would not be enough because children are genetically very unequal. Some are born with the potential for great intelligence, physical strength, good looks, and others are weaker, less intelligent, not as good looking. And that creates tremendous differences in possible opportunities. So to achieve equality of opportunity, you'd have to have the government engaged in a program of eugenics, determining an equal gene pool for everybody. Or another way would be perhaps they would devote extra time and resources to trying to compensate those who were not as strong, not as good-looking, not as intelligent, have special programs of education for the less intelligent, the retarded, whatever, maybe even trying to improve people's looks. Or finally, they could attempt to handicap those who had advantages in any of these areas, make them less intelligent, less good-looking, less strong, and so on. So I don't think the people who say they favor equality of opportunity would be willing to buy into this, which are its logical implications.
And yet, it's interesting to note that the egalitarian left, always beneath the surface, there's a hostility to the family because they perceive exactly what it is that you're saying, that the family is the primordial source of so much inequality. So instead of saying to themselves, then the concern with inequality must be a ridiculous one if it would require breaking up the family. They just say to themselves, well, maybe we have to go after the family. In fact, Robert Nisbet, the conservative sociologist, I had to say that because you never get to say conservative sociologist, was critiquing John Rawls, the egalitarian. He said if John Rawls really wanted to be honest, he would advocate state intervention to break up families, to give people egalitarian upbringings. But he's not honest, and he won't do it.
Right. Well, but those are the implications of that position.
Absolutely.
But in any case, the whole idea is absurd. It's a totally mistaken view of what opportunities are. It assumes that opportunities are entirely external, that they're brought to you, in effect, by waiters carrying trays of opportunities that they give to some and not to others. But that's not true. Let's pause for a moment and think of what an opportunity is. An opportunity is nothing more than an occasion on which successful action is possible. Anytime there is something going on, that some circumstance that you could exploit to your advantage, that's an opportunity. And opportunities are virtually superabundant. If you are penniless and there's any job you're capable of doing, well, you have the opportunity to earn some money. If there are any skills you're capable of acquiring, you have the opportunity to acquire additional skills, and so on. So opportunities are out there, but equally important is the fact that opportunities are created by people over the course of their lives. People start with a certain innate ability, a very limited innate ability, and they confront external circumstances. And if they seize some of these opportunities, that affects their further development. For example, if a child seizes the opportunity to learn arithmetic, that creates the further opportunity of his being able to learn algebra. If he didn't exploit the opportunity to learn arithmetic, he could never exploit the opportunity to learn algebra. He wouldn't be capable of it. If he learns algebra, he opens up the possibility of exploiting the opportunity to learn calculus, and so on. If an individual gets a job in a factory, that creates the opportunity, together with certain other things, of possibly becoming a foreman at that factory. If he should become a foreman in that factory, that opens up the opportunities to advance to a higher managerial position. Of course, he may have to get some additional education along the way, but the thing is that opportunities present themselves as the rungs on a ladder. You can, if you start climbing the lower rungs, that brings you within reach of the possibility of advancing to higher rungs. And so what you've done with your whole life in terms of the skills you've acquired, the character you've developed, the muscular strength you've achieved, your appearance, that determines the opportunities that you'll be able to exploit in the future. So we build our own opportunities. They're not just handed to us. We have to create them. And I'm surprised that people aren't complaining left and right about all of the inequality of opportunity whenever a major firm appoints or looks for a new president, or when the Catholic Church has to appoint a new pope. Just think of it. There was a new pope a year or two ago appointed. Where was your opportunity to become pope, or my opportunity? The only people who had an opportunity to become pope were those who were members of the College of Cardinals. And to become a member of the College of Cardinals, you first had to be a bishop, and so on. At every point in time, opportunities of any given kind are open, never to everybody, but only to those who have the necessary prerequisites for exploiting those opportunities.
I think that's where some objections would come in, and they would say that one of the prerequisites, and you, of course, address this in your essay, freedom of opportunity, not equality of opportunity, we're linking to it on today's show notes page, tomwoods.com/385, is that education is one of those prerequisites, and that, therefore, we are inadvertently making the case for public education.
No, what's needed is people have to recognize the importance of acquiring knowledge, and public education is a major obstacle to the acquisition of knowledge. It's virtually impossible to have innovations. There's no incentives no freedom of initiative, no competition, and also the state deprives people of the opportunity to achieve education by preventing young people from getting jobs which would help them pay for private education. What we need is freedom of opportunity with respect to education, which would mean that people can introduce educational innovations, that we get the government out of the way of prescribing curricula, teaching qualifications, and have private support for merit scholarships, and allow young people to earn money to pay for their own education.
What do you think about the internet in terms of opportunities for education at a low cost?
I think that's a tremendous advance, and it will be fantastic if the government doesn't destroy it.
Now, let me try to, again, play the devil's advocate here. I still think somebody would come up to you and say, it's certainly going to be the case that somebody who is raised in a wealthy household with parents who care deeply about him and, gets sent to an exclusive private school is going to be in a position to have those prerequisites to be able to exploit more opportunities than somebody who does not. Now, of course, the response to that would be the only way around that would be to dismantle the family unit altogether in order to bring about full egalitarianism. But couldn't we do something short of that? Couldn't we say people who don't have those opportunities, maybe they get special scholarships, or maybe the state gives them extra money for education so as to try to level the playing field? What would be the objection to that?
Anyone who wants to voluntarily contribute to enable talented young people who lack means to provide them with education, that's wonderful. They should do that. But the government should not be intervening. Here we are, the government claims it's concerned with education, the development of the mind, and the way it's going to get the money is at the point of a gun. So it overrides people's free judgment and free choice. And now it's true that if everything else were the same, and we had two children of equal genetic capability, equal choices made, those who had richer, more caring parents would be ahead. That's true. But that would not be any kind of limitation on how far those born to poorer parents or less educated parents, how far they could rise. And the ability of people to have wealth benefits everybody in the society by providing more means of production, a greater demand for labor. It underlies the standard of living of everybody. Now, in addition, children born to the least educated, and the poorest parents, they still can, and often again and again do, outstrip children born to far wealthier parents, better educated parents. And you can see this in terms of a series of conceptual snapshots, as it were, of the development of children over the course of their first 30 or 40 years of life. Suppose we have two children. One is the son of a poor coal miner, an uneducated poor coal miner. The other is the son of a multimillionaire, highly educated businessman. Now, these circumstances of the parents have no effect at all when the children are still in the crib. They can't. The one whose father is a millionaire can't go out and call his stockbroker and make additional millions based on his father's millions. They both have to develop their abilities. Now, suppose by age 6 or 7, the child of the poor coal miner has reached the point where he knows that it's important to acquire knowledge. He has an attitude toward knowledge, that knowledge is important. He has to put in an effort to acquire it, do his best to understand what's going on in the world. And the other one, the son of the rich, better educated person, has not developed this attitude. Now, let's move forward another 7 years or so. They're now 14. The one who's developed the attitude of it's important to acquire knowledge, he may have a significant body of knowledge of not just arithmetic, but algebra, maybe the beginnings, the rudiments of calculus. He may understand trigonometry, have some knowledge of physics and chemistry, while the son of the wealthier, better educated one who's not interested knows nothing of these things. Now, by the time they're 20 or 21, the one who's acquired this knowledge will be of real value to an employer. He'll make a significant contribution to an employer's profits. The son of the wealthier person who's learned nothing would have to be employed in a menial capacity unless his father will pay him a salary or pay some associate to pay him a fictitious salary. By the time they're 30, the one who's acquired significant knowledge and developed some important ideas, he's earned some significant money by now, and he has the ability to start his own business. The other one doesn't. The one who's got his own business is now in a position to make money at a far more rapid rate than the wealthy heir. Under his own intelligent, competent management, he can earn a rate of return of 50, 75, 100%, and he saves and reinvests the far greater part of it, almost all of it. So his wealth grows very, very rapidly. The richer one, if he tries to manage the wealth, he can rapidly lose it. So he has to have others manage it, and he'll have to accept a very low rate of return, 3, 4, 5%, and he'll be consuming most of it. So as time goes on, the one who started poorer, at some point, perhaps by the time they're 40, he is now richer. And this is something that's repeated in the real world again and again in every generation.
Some people, I think, particularly like not just John Rawls, but people in general think that if you have some innate talent, then that gives you an advantage over other people that practically guarantees that you will have more opportunities and more success. But it's not enough just to have the talent. You have to cultivate the talent and then spot the opportunities. As you say, it's not like opportunities are delivered to you with an envelope marked with the word opportunity. Even sometimes perceiving opportunities or just getting off your rear end and going out and pursuing something and doing it is what's necessary and called for, and is not a talent that even the most talented people have. I've had many occasions in the past few years where I've had some success that came about because I thought of an idea and then I went out and did it. It required some effort on my part. It was not a matter of just sitting back and waiting for opportunities to be delivered to me. Sometimes
Right.
you come up with your best ideas when you're really against the wall, you have few options left. That's really when your best ideas come to you, and that's when some of my own best ideas have come to me. And in fact, before I forget, I wanted to ask you this the last time, and I don't want to run out of time before asking you this time. You are one of a handful of people to receive your Ph.D. directly under Ludwig von Mises. Is that right?
Yes, yes.
Now, first of all, what did you write your dissertation on? I don't think I ever found that out.
The original title was The Theory of Originary Interest. The title of the version that was accepted was The Theory of Aggregate Profit and the Average Rate of Profit.
So this sounds like themes that returned in your book Capitalism. Am I right about that?
Yes, very much so. Yes.
Are there any, I don't know, any personal anecdotes that you can recount for us that tell us something about Mises, the man, that you in particular as a PhD student of his would have that other people wouldn't?
Well, I remember every time I attended his seminar for many years before going to graduate school. I started attending his seminar in my senior year in high school, and I remember my initial meeting with him on February 23rd, 1953. I was 16 years old at the time, and I met him. I was with Ralph Rako, who I assume many of your audience members must know. And we had previously gone to the Foundation for Economic Education and told them of our interest in Mises, and they arranged an appointment with him for us. And it was there that he invited us to attend his seminar. And I was always overwhelmed whenever I saw him at that meeting or when he would come into the seminar. I always knew I was in the presence of one of the great minds in history, not just the history of economic thought, but history. I remember once having a discussion with Reiko about how important we thought Mises was, and I was trying to moderate my actual belief. And I would say, well, he ranks with Mozart and other greats. But actually, if you think of the state of the world, particularly at that time, there was absolutely nobody able to defend the capitalist economic system. And Mises was the first man in history to come along with a systematic, well-reasoned, in-depth, clear defense of the capitalist economic system. And if you think of what was required by the situation of the world and his ability to meet it, I would say he was the human being with the highest social marginal utility of anyone on earth at that time.
That is indeed quite an endorsement. What was it like to get feedback on your dissertation work from the man himself?
Well, this was become as quite a shock. It came as quite a shock to me too. In my dissertation, I have to back up for a minute. I previously wrote an MBA thesis under him called "The Classical Economists and the Austrians on Value and Costs." And in reading that, I learned a tremendous amount. I had accumulated a list of unanswered questions, and I was walking around for some time after reading all of the classical economists and the Austrians, the leading Austrians. I was walking around with a feeling that I could describe only as feeling intellectually pregnant. I didn't quite yet know what I was going to deliver, but I knew there was something there that was really cooking. And so sometime a few months after getting my MBA, I had like 4 or 5 days of solid integrations of everything coming together, triggered by reading a number of passages quoted in Hazlitt's The Failure of the New Economics, passages from John Stuart Mill on demand for commodities is not demand for labor. And I understood those passages, and this somehow opened the floodgates, and everything started to come together. And all of what came together, I put in the doctoral dissertation. And what it consisted of was a new theory of what makes it possible for all businesses to sell for a larger sum of money than they expend in buying the means of production. And I thought I'd done something pretty enormous. And my dissertation came to 640 double-spaced type pages. And I handed it in, I think, in October of 1961. And in January of 60, no, I'm sorry, I guess I handed it in October of 62. In January of 63, I learned that one of the members of my reading committee had rejected the dissertation, and that Mises was actually pretty disappointed in it because he thought I was attempting, he recognized I was attempting to resurrect classical economics and integrate it with Austrian economics. And he found the trouble I was having with this member of my reading committee to be somewhat amusing. Mises judged the committee member as a Marxist, which I think is probably true. I understand the guy went off to write editorials for the Washington Post.
All right. Well, there's some evidence.
And he found it amusing that this guy was giving me trouble when I was presenting a more modernized scientific foundation for his beliefs. Mises thought that in attempting to resurrect classical economics, I was in some way resurrecting and defending Marxism. So that's the story on that.
Okay. Now, I remember there's a section in your book, Capitalism, where you expressly take the time to say that that is not the case? Was that in a kind of self-conscious reply to Mises?
Well, and to anyone else who might have the same idea. Now, he may have had some opening to change his mind. I finally got my doctorate in '63, and 2 years later, I delivered a lecture before a group that was the core of which was Mises seminar members. It was at the University Club in New York, and it was titled A Ricardian's Critique of the Exploitation Theory. I'm also an admirer of Ricardo and Adam Smith. And one of the things that I developed, one of the great ideas, one of the great conclusions I came to, was that if you really think about it, the original primary form of income is not wages, as Adam Smith maintained, but profit. I don't know how familiar you are, you may be with Adam Smith, but Adam Smith is really the father of the Marxian exploitation theory. Smith argued that in the early and rude state of affairs, in the original state of things, where you only had manual workers producing and selling products, all income earned was wages. And that only later, as capitalists appeared on the scene, profit came into existence as a deduction from what was naturally and rightfully wages. And this is the foundation of the Marxian exploitation theory. Marx argues that rightfully all income belongs to the wage earners. They create everything. And profits, interest, land rent are unjust deductions from wages. And that was Adam Smith's view, too. And what I pointed out was that if, in fact, we had manual workers producing and selling products, they would have sales revenues. The money paid to them would not be wages, but sales revenues. And that's what I got from John Stuart Mill, who had pointed out that demand for commodities, money spent in buying products, is not the payment of wages. It's a sales revenue. Wages are a separate payment made by capitalists. So the reality is, in the early and rude state of society, the manual workers had sales revenues, but they had not acted as capitalists. They had not bought for the purpose of selling, with the result that they had no money costs of production to deduct from those sales revenues, with the further result that the entire sales revenues were profit. So my conclusion was that if you interpreted classical economics correctly, by bringing in John Stuart Mill against Adam Smith, that the original primary form of income is profit, not wages, that capitalists are not responsible for the phenomenon of profit, which exists prior to their existence, but rather for the phenomena of wages and costs of production, which constitute a reduction in the proportion of sales revenues that is profit. So, in my view, this is really a demolition of the exploitation theory, and I have an essay. It's on Kindle in a collection called The Benevolent Nature of Capitalism and Other Essays. One of those essays is Classical Economics versus the Exploitation Theory. And then, of course, I deal with it at much greater length in my book, Capitalism.
Okay, I'll make sure and link to both things. I'll link to Capitalism and to that essay. I remember reading this section in Capitalism, and if I'm remembering this right, this was many years ago, but if I'm remembering this right, you talked about Bombavrik's discussion of the exploitation theory, and then you went on to say that there is a much more straightforward, more thorough demolition of the exploitation theory, and it's as follows. And then you went and developed your, and by the way, I think your explanation is easier for people to understand as well than the Bombavrik one, which for all its merits is perhaps a bit more technical.
Yes, it's certainly more technical, and also Bombavrik is conceding the Marxist point that profit or interest is a deduction from wages. You see, he develops a complicated example of constructing an engine over a period of 5 years. One worker mines the ore, another fabricates the ore into iron, and the third builds parts, and the fourth does this and that. And at the end of 5 years, there's a finished engine that sells for a certain amount. And Bombavrik asks the question, even if only the workers have a claim to the proceeds, would they divide it equally? Or must there be some compensation for one worker having to wait 5 years for payment and the last worker only having to wait 1 year? And he argues the payments would be unequal, and he builds a justification for interest as he argues it's a justified deduction from what would otherwise be all wages. But the reality is it wouldn't otherwise be all wages. It would otherwise be all profit for the reasons I've explained. And so he was conceding the basic point of Marx that profit is a deduction from wages. Although in von Barbec's view, it's a totally justified deduction, Marx thinks of it as a totally unjustified deduction.
Well, I will link to Freedom of Opportunity, Not Equality of Opportunity, the essay that we've been talking about today. Also, that collection that you mentioned that contains the discussion of this issue on the collection on the benevolent nature of capitalism. And then, of course, I'll link to capitalism itself. I'll link to your Twitter. I'll link to capitalism.net, your website. All of this will be, this being episode 385, all of this will be at tomwoods.com/385. All kinds of George Reisman links. If you want to become smarter, you're going to want to visit that page. George, thanks for your time today. I always appreciate it.
Thank you, Tom.
All right, everybody, don't forget tomwoods.com/385. I appreciate all the comments you guys post, by the way, on the show notes pages, and I just wish I had more time to interact with everybody and jump in and comment myself. I do so only rarely, and usually when I want to correct something. So it's not usually to say, hey, thank you very much. That's a very generous thing of you to say, or to add ideas of my own. I'm wrapping up my work on the Ron Paul Homeschool program over the next few weeks, and I've just got to focus on that. I've really got to get that stuff done, but then I really would like to be able to comment more. So do please check out those show notes pages, tomwoods.com/385 being today's. Tomorrow we're going to talk once again to Paul Gottfried, and we're going to talk about fascism and what it actually is. You know, it turns out that a fascist is not just somebody you dislike. It actually has a meaning. And we're going to talk about exactly what that meaning is and the problems with just throwing the word fascism around at everything we happen to dislike. So that's tomorrow on the show. Make sure you have subscribed on iTunes or Stitcher. I'm always badgering you because, again, think of all the wonderful things you could be missing if you weren't subscribed to the show. And, of course, tell your friends. My goodness, you got these precious gems here in your possession, and you're not telling your friends about it. Shame, shame. Everybody knows your name. Send them over to tomwoods.com where you can subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for listening.
The Tom Woods Show.